What's up, people? I'm one of your hosts, Phoenix.
And I am the other host, Titan.
And welcome to NTAT Diablo 4 Edition. This is part of our preview review section of the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So we're going to jump right into the topic of our thoughts on Diablo 4. We're going to break this down to a couple of categories: graphical style, classes we've used, class balance, gameplay feel, and what we want to see from the full game. So Titan, let's just go ahead and start off with the graphical style, the difference between Diablo 3 and Diablo 4.
All right, so going back to Diablo 3, I only played a little bit of this, and I actually played Diablo Immortal on the PC.
Oh yeah, the PC and phone game. Okay,
yep.
Gotcha.
And the graphical difference, I mean, it was like a massive jump from 3 to 4. Like 4 is fully just like the details are there, and it really impressed me.
Did it?
Now, I have told you this, I don't like the over the top look. It threw me off. But after about, I would say, an hour of playing, I didn't even think of it. It became like second nature, and it felt, you know, just like a normal game.
Gotcha.
So it didn't bother me as much later on in the game.
Okay, I gotcha. What I really enjoyed was the return to form. Now, I'm not a PC player, so I never played Diablo 1 and 2. Granted, I am next weekend going to start playing Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Okay.
But one of the big difference in the graphical style is Diablo 3 had more of a, I guess you would say, a over-the-top kind of cartoonish look. Maybe I'm getting that kind of wrong, but it was a lot of bright colors, right? In Diablo 4, they've kind of went back to their roots, which is more of a horrific type look, right?
Yeah.
More gory. I don't want to say realistic, but I guess that's the best word for it. And so when you saw those two differences, what did you think?
I actually thought about Elden Ring and how I felt when I first played Elden Ring and looking at the massive, beautiful world. There was several moments where I'm like, I wish I could see this from a first-person perspective because of how good it looked.
Gotcha.
So I feel like it's taking away that I can't, you know, explore in a way that makes it more in-depth and realistic feeling.
Gotcha. Okay.
What about you?
I love the style. Only one thing kind of threw me off, and I think I talked to you about it, and I actually read an article, I can't remember who it was by, but they kind of talk about, because me and you both played the Necromancer, and when you summon the skeletons, they kind of out of place because they're kind of glowing, but I got why they did it. It kind of highlights them so you kind of know they're part of your team. Yeah. But it did kind of throw me off, but other than that, I love the style. I really do. I think it fits. I think it fits the tone. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the classes that we use. So why don't you tell everybody the class you use and what you thought?
I used the Necromancer. I think that was the only character that I did play.
Okay.
When I started, and it being a beta, I understand that this class was like really overpowered. Okay. And so the entire time that I was going through it, the first, I would say, 2 hours that I played, it was really easy. Like it felt like everything was easy, and I like being overpowered. I like feeling like a god in a game. But I found that really fun. But then as I got later on to a boss, it took me forever to beat that boss.
Now, why is that?
It was a different style, and I sucked at it. I didn't know. Like it took me about 3 times to figure out like what his moves were. And so after I figured out what his moves was, I'm like, okay, now I can start, you know, strategizing. Right. But it still took me several times, and it brings me into one of the complaints that I have about the beta, is that the network problems. It sucked. The second time that I fought the boss, like I was so close to beating him. I was so close to beating him, and then my network failed. It kicked me off the network, and it actually started me very back at the beginning of the dungeon.
Oh, that's right, because you had to run through the entire dungeon to get back to.
Yep, and I actually have a speed run of this because I was like, I'm not fighting all these people again. I'm just running all the way through. And so that's what I did. I'm like, I know the path, so I followed the path. I made it there, and like as soon as I got in there, I died again, like almost instantly. It was about 3 more times before I figured it out. But it brought in another good thing for me, is that this was the first game that I started to break down different aspects of the class. Like, okay, this is the boss. I know this is what his weaknesses are. This is his strengths. How can I use that to my advantage? Right. And that was like the first time that I really like sat down and broke it down, you know, element by element.
Gotcha. No, I definitely get what you're saying there. But that's a great part of it being a beta, because what they're going to do, what Blizzard's going to do, is they're going to take that feedback, talking about the connectivity, and they should be working on that, because we've got a couple of months before the game actually comes out.
Yeah, that's really sad for me.
I know, it was so good, right?
It really was.
Okay, so I use two classes. I use the Necromancer first.
Okay.
And so I love the Necromancer class. I love the skeletons. I love the powers. It was a really fun class to use. I know, like you said at the very beginning, I was destroying everything in my path.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. We teamed up a while, both of us playing Necromancers. We use different skills. What were some of the skills that you would use? You use the bomb?
I actually found the best class for me. It's Blight.
Yeah, the Blight.
If you use
Blight was OP, FYI.
It really was. And I found a strategy that if as soon as you get into a fight, if you throw a Blight bomb, a couple of them, it would destroy those enemies. And then that would give you enough dead bodies that you could use the corpse explosion, which, if you had the upgraded skill, would do extra Blight damage.
Right.
And the skeletons also had a perk that would do 15% extra damage to Blight enemies.
Right.
And so it was just, I mean, once you started doing it, it was like boom, 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 and everything was wiped out.
And see, I use a couple of different powers. I use the hemorrhage power, which would cause damage it would cause damage. And then I forget the name of the other one, but I would rip the flesh off of enemies and form a corpse. So whenever we needed a corpse on the field and we didn't have one, I could pull one off to do that. And those skills work really well with what you were doing, along with our skeletons. But one of the things that I found as we were playing through was it almost felt like I was on autopilot. Like I was just kind of walking through. Most of the times we could kind of run into enemies and just kind of sit back and let our skeletons kind of do the work.
Yeah.
But that is definitely a class that I want to try. Now, this is where my differentiates come from. I use the sorcerer class, again, from what I heard, because these are the only two classes I use. That's another very powerful class.
Okay.
But there was a massive difference. Now, when I played Necro, I think I was just gathering orbs, but I've never used them. I never really healed myself.
No.
Everything using the hemorrhage, you had, I think, 20% chance of causing a heal orb. I believe that's what I had it set up. And so I stayed healed pretty much the entire time, plus the skeletons were doing a lot of the work, right?
Yeah.
When I played as the sorcerer, well, I got hit. You know, I took some damage and I was like, oh, okay, I need to manage this. It wasn't bad, you know, but at least I had to heal myself some. And I was like, oh, I'm actually having a little more fun because I feel like I'm actually in a little bit of danger, you know. So that was interesting. So I will be interested to see which class I decide to go with, because I think we decided we're going to play this one together. And see which way I go. I know you're playing Necro. I already know that.
I'm hoping they don't change it too much. That's going to be disappointing if they like nerf it a ton. Which that's what I'm expecting, because it was a little OP, but still. Gotcha.
So that gets to the class balance. Now, although you played only one class and I played two, I did my research on the other classes. And the consensus across everybody who was playing the beta was some of the melee classes felt incredibly underwhelming. The Barbarian, the Druid were two that were brought up constantly. Now, there were obviously really good players who, once they got to level 25 or after, they could kind of min-max and create a build that was extremely powerful. But they had to get to that point first. And that was pretty bad. You know, because if you want to play with one of those classes, and you know, we had a friend that really wanted to play Druid, and the story that he told me was him and two other friends played as all three Druids, and they were just taking forever to kill small mobs, and even going into dungeons. And he said he would die, and he's waiting to be resurrected, and there's two other, they're dying, like, and he was like, well, man, this doesn't feel good. This beta doesn't feel good. Like, they got some work to do. Then he decided, just off of a whim, you know, hey, let me try out the Necro, and he was like, this is a completely different game.
One of the things that he said was that he had to play a lot longer to get to the same point as the beginning Necromancer.
Right.
And I definitely understand that. And again, I only played one of the classes, so that was like the only experience I had with that. And again, I know it was overpowered without even playing the other classes.
Right. We both felt that.
Exactly. And like, I'll feed off what you were saying earlier about you didn't have to heal. When I started getting to the boss that was killing me over and over again, it was because I didn't know how to heal. Or I knew how to heal, but it was like I didn't need it at the time.
Right.
So it was like a new mechanic. I'm like, oh, I'm actually having to use
because you weren't prepared for it.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
I'm like, oh man, I actually have to heal.
It was like, what button am I supposed to hit?
Yep. And then when I figured it out, it's like I only had 4, and I'm like, this is not enough. And I'm like, going back to what we were saying, it's like if that was another class that didn't have the skeletons helping out, it's like you're severely crippled.
Yes, that's what it felt like. That was my experience when I played with the sorcerer. Like I had fun, and trust me, it was powerful.
Okay.
Like you could offensively, you could just destroy. But when I got hit, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on, this feels different. But like I said, it was fun. Yeah. But I can imagine if you're in a position where not only are you taking damage, but you can barely dish it out, that probably feels really bad. And one of the points that I think I've heard, and I definitely agree with, is that you don't, even though some defense of it is, hey, you know, once you get to, I don't know, level 25, you know, you'll be really powerful. It's like, but for the casual audience, like us, do you really want to go 25 levels before you feel good? Like, no. Yeah. Like, at that point, you're going to be like, and what if that was the only class we used?
Exactly.
Right? Then you're like, you know what, this game isn't for me. And that's probably what you would have felt, because this is your first, like, real forte into Diablo, right?
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
So,
and again, it goes back to if like the other games, I played a little bit of them, not too much to know even if I liked the classes or not. This, if I would have went in and just started dying and not got anywhere, I would have just gave up and probably said, I don't even like the game.
Agreed. All right, so the next we're going to talk about the gameplay feel. Now, this part, for me anyway, is mainly for you. And the reason being is because, as you said, those type of games aren't the type of games you normally play with. And you went into Diablo 4 going, I'll try this out. But then you were like, oh my God, I really love this, as you were talking about after you got about an hour or so in. Yeah. So I want to get your thoughts on how it felt playing it, and what led you up to going, I don't know if this is for me, to this is one of my most anticipated games. Yeah,
like you said, my thoughts going in, and I hardly ever go into a game with a negative mindset. That ruins games for me a lot of times.
Right.
Before I even, if I make up my mind that I don't like something before I play it, it's already done.
Right.
But this, I'm like, you know what? I know I'm not going to enjoy it, but I'm still going to give it a try. And the first, several little bit of me playing, I'm like, I really can't get into this. But then, like, I started, like, the more I played, the funner it got. I'm like, oh, I'm actually getting good at this. I'm like, oh, I like this. I like this. And I started paying attention to what I liked instead of what I didn't like.
Right.
And I enjoyed that. I'm like, I enjoy being able to play this without having, so much headache that I don't even want to play. That when I got to the boss that was so hard that it took probably an hour for me to beat, it was okay. I was willing to put in that extra time to beat it, because I'm like, okay, I spent all this time getting up to this point. I'm not giving up right now.
You were invested.
Exactly. And so it was like, I just put in that extra energy. And even when it kicked me all the way back to the dungeon, the beginning of the dungeon, I could have just said, screw it, I'm not playing anymore, and done. But I'm like, no, I'm on a mission to finish this.
Right.
And it just, the balance of the I can't even say the balance of the character, but just the game itself was just fun.
Right, and I think that's important, because what they attempted to do, or what they're attempting to do, because the game's not quite out yet, is they want a broader audience.
Yeah.
And whenever you want a broader audience, you're going to go into more casual gamers, people who have never played or don't really think that's that type of game, as you discussed.
Yeah.
And so having that ease of entry is very important.
Yeah.
And so I think they nailed that so far. Again, we'll kind of see what it looks like once they, get the feedback and they've made their changes. I do want to see a little bit of change to the skeletons, but don't too much. But yeah, I think that's very important. The game to me felt fluid. I beat Diablo 3. Again, that was my first full-fledged Diablo. I really enjoyed it. So I was used to the gameplay itself. But it was enough changed in it that kept me engaged.
Yeah.
And again, Diablo, when you play with friends, like, that's where it is. That's where you want to be. It kicks up the entertainment like tenfold.
Yeah.
But it was smooth. I really enjoyed the gameplay. Now, what I will say is some of the dungeon mechanics I'm curious about. Normal in the Diablo game, when you go through a dungeon, you go through, you kill the enemies, and then you make it to the boss. One of the changes they did in this one is, or that they're making as well, is that you have a lot of this backtracking. So you can go through one part, you'll finish it, and then you have to kind of backtrack again.
Yeah.
And that felt a little different, a little funny. Also, speaking about how to make that, or at least from my research, how to make that a little more fun is to add enemies back. That also doesn't sound like it's going to be fun. Like when you've made it through like this long corridor and you're finished, you're like, oh, now I got to turn around and make my way back. I don't really want to have to go back through these enemies again. Now at the beginning, it's really easy and it's just kind of spamming a button. But as you get further in, and it gets harder, and it will. Like I said, playing Diablo 3. You're not going to want to do that, right? You don't want your resources drained and everything else. Is like, I just want to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I said, I think it was smooth. It felt good. It felt right. I think they nailed it.
All right, so going to what we want to see from the final game. My gameplay experience was a little bit different than yours because I paid attention to the cutscenes.
Right.
Now, I'm not a cutscene person. Most games that have cutscenes, I usually just skip them and just don't even pay attention to the story. But this one caught me. Like, the story was so good. And I'm not going to get into spoilers. I'm not going to say anything like that. But just the story hooked me from the beginning. And I think that's what made the game a little bit better for me. Is because I actually had, I was wanting to know more about, oh, who is this character? What's going on with this? Why is this happening now? And it kept hooking me. Like, every time I'd complete a dungeon, it would progress just a little bit and give me just a slight more information on what's happening. I'm like, I want to know more.
Yeah, I that's always been a draw for me, is story. Now, what I did for mine is I skipped all the cutscenes because I knew that our progress was going to be erased and we were going to start from the beginning. So I kind of wanted to have that as a fresh look when they brought it. They may even change some things, so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But in almost any game, if it's a good story, something that at least grabs you, it pushes you along, even if there are gameplay mechanics or parts of the game that may be hit and miss. You'll keep moving forward because you're like, I just want to get to the next story beat, or I just want to get to the next part of information. And so to me, that's always been very important. So I hope that continues throughout this part of the game.
I'm definitely, I'm 100%, I'm going to pre-order the game, and I'm just excited to play the full game.
Yeah, same here. All right, so that's all we have for you today. Again, this is a special feature, so this will probably land Monday or Tuesday. What are you thinking?
Maybe Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah, so let's do Tuesday. But as always, we'll be here on Friday. You be there as well.